Hi, everyone. I'm going to walk you through our lesson on complex numbers, which plays a role in solving quadratics and also something we're going to do next semester when we start solving some bigger polynomials. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is actually hit pause and work through this opener, as we're going to need these kind of ideas for the work we're going to do in this lesson. So go ahead and hit pause and work through this opener. These are two expressions that you should have an idea of how to simplify them. First one, these two are being multiplied. This next one you're subtracting. So go ahead and work through those and then go ahead and press play when you're ready to see how that worked out. All right, so this first one, we're multiplying what's called a binomial, so something with two terms times another binomial. We've been using boxes to help keep that work organized. Now, really what that is, another word you've heard before is FOIL, and it's just a fancy type of distribution where we'll take X and multiply it to both terms in that other set of parentheses. And the same thing with the 2. We're going to multiply it to both terms in the other set of parentheses. Now, the boxes help keep it all that organized. So you don't need the box, but I like using them, especially the box is kind of how we undo the FOIL, right, to help us factor. So I like using the boxes at least right now. So after you get the insides of your boxes by multiplying all those terms, make sure you combine your like terms, the 6x and negative 5x. Once you add all these terms together, you get 3x squared plus x minus 10. That is as simplified as that can get. Over here on the second one, really when you're minusing all these terms, I just distribute this negative, and that tells me all the signs change, and then I can just start combining like terms. So 3x squared minus one of those x squareds is 2x squared. 10 minus 1 is 9, and then we have that 6x all by itself. So final answer there is 2x squared plus 6x plus 9. So like I said, we're going to use that here in just a second. Before we do, let's talk about what this lesson is about. We're going to introduce what is called the imaginary number, and we have that here. So I is equal to the square root of negative 1. And up to this point, we have not been able to take square roots of negatives. And what we've said is any square root of a negative number is a non-real answer. What this allows us to do now is if I'm trying to take the square root of, let's say, negative 9, before we'd say that's not a real number. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take out that negative 1 or factor it out, which brings in that I, or the imaginary unit. And then we can take the square root of 9, which is 3. So instead of us saying that root negative 9 is not a real number, now we're going to simplify that down to be 3i. So that's really the point of us introducing this I, is that it now allows us to take square roots of negatives and allows every quadratic or every polynomial to have solutions. Excuse me. So we definitely need to know that I is equal to negative 1, and then also how to reduce it out. We're going to get some more practice with that in other lessons. The only other thing we need to know for this lesson is what I squared is. We're not going to worry about I cubed or I to the 8th. I squared, how we can figure that out is if we take what we know is I, which is root negative 1, and square both sides, well, look what happens. The square root and the squaring, they go away. So I get I squared is equal to negative 1. And that gives us our value of I squared. It's just negative 1. So these are the two facts we need to know, that I is equal to the root negative 1 and I squared is equal to negative 1. Now, do you need to memorize I squared? No, you can just do the work that I just did here. Square both sides. As long as you start with I equals negative 1, the square root and the squaring go away, leaving us with just negative 1. All right, so let's go ahead and work through some operations here with those complex numbers. And that'll conclude this short video. Before we do that, just to know, a complex number is usually going to be in the form of a plus or minus bi. Now, plus or minus meaning sometimes we might add, sometimes we might subtract. Lots of times when they show up in the quadratic formula, we get that plus minus. So it just kind of depends on what we're working with. All right, so if we're adding and subtracting, those are actually just like your warm-up problem for what we did here. Okay, where it's just combining like terms. So we can add terms with i's together and we can add numbers together, but we can't add i's and numbers together. Only i's with i's and numbers with numbers. So what I mean by that is if I have 3i and I'm minus 2i, those come together to give me 1i. If I've got 2 plus 5, it comes together to give us 7. So writing it in that form would be 7 plus I, or I plus 7. It honestly does not matter. We're going to call it 7 plus I. Okay, and that's it. Just combining like terms. So now if I'm subtracting, I'll distribute that negative. So negative 1 minus 8i, and then minus 4 minus I. I'm going to start with combining. Let's start with the numbers this time. -1 minus 4 is -5. And then -8i minus I is -9i. And that's it. We can't simplify that any further. All right, last one is multiplication. And guess what? We're going to multiply these just like you did in the warm-up. We're going to use a box. Again, I like the boxes just because it really helps keep all our work organized and make sure that everything gets multiplied together. So 7 plus 3i, -8 minus 6i. And then I'll do -8 times 7 is -56. -8 times 3i is -24i. 7 times -6i is -42i. And then down here, where I'm multiplying two terms with i's, we'll definitely multiply the numbers together. So -6 times 3 is -18. And then I times I is I squared. Well, we just talked about what I squared is, right? We said that, and I'm going to rewrite this over here on the side. We said that I squared was equal to -1. So really, we have -18 times -1, which makes that +18. So to simplify this, we just have to combine our like terms. Remember, we don't really have the I squared anymore. Instead, it's 18. So I can add 18 with -56, which gives me -38, I think. 48, yep. And then -24i minus 42i is -66i. And then we are done. Right, well, that's all we're going to do with complex numbers. So you have a little bit of practice to do on your own, and then you're all set. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.